Chapter 1. The Blood-Red Dawn. Kael Draven woke to the scent of iron and ash. At 29, he was a sellsword turned reluctant guardian of Virith Hold, a crumbling fortress perched on the cliffs of the Red Vale, a jagged coastline where the sea churned crimson under a perpetually overcast sky. The villagers below in Hollowmere whispered that the tide carried the blood of ancient gods, spilled in a war forgotten by all but the stones. That morning, the waves roared louder, and a red mist rolled inland, staining the hold's walls like wet paint. Kael pulled on his leather coat, scarred from a dozen fights, and grabbed his blade, a long sword with a hilt of blackened steel. His companion, Lysa Vorn, a wiry thief with a shaved head and a grin too sharp, met him on the ramparts. "Tide's angry," she said, peering down, "and the fishers ain't come back." Kael's jaw tightened. Hollowmere relied on the sea. If the fishers were lost, hunger would follow. He descended to the village, Lysa at his heels, her twin daggers glinting. Hollowmere was a cluster of salt-worn shacks, 300 souls clinging to survival. The elder Marta waited by the docks, gray-haired, her hands gnarled from years of netting. "Something's in the water," she rasped, pointing to a spear washed ashore, its tip crusted with red crystal. Kael touched it, and a jolt ran through him. Visions of sinking ships, of scaled hands pulling men under. "We'll find it," he vowed, though doubt gnawed at him. Chapter 2. The Fisher's Tale. Kael recruited Torin, a broad-shouldered fisherman who'd lost his brother to the last storm. Torin hefted an axe, his eyes hard. "I'll row us out. Whatever's taking him, it's mine to kill." They launched a skiff into the crimson waves, Lysa scanning the horizon, Kael gripping the spear. The mist thickened, the sea growling beneath them. Half a league out, wreckage bobbed, splintered planks, nets torn like spiderwebs. Torin cursed as a shadow darted under the boat, rocking it. Lysa flung a dagger into the water. It sank, and a screech erupted, bubbling red. Then silence. Kael leaned over, spear ready, and saw it. A figure, humanoid but scaled, eyes glowing amber, clutching a fisherman's corpse. It hissed and vanished, leaving a trail of crystal shards floating upward. Back at Hollowmere, Marta examined the shards. "Bloodstone," she muttered. "Old magic. The Vale's waking something." She handed Kael a map, faded and salt-stained, marking a cave at the cliff's base. "Answers lie there. Take care. The sea's not your only foe." Chapter 3. The Cave of Whispers. The trio trekked to the cave, the mist cloaking their steps. Inside, the walls shimmered with bloodstone veins, pulsing faintly. Kael's torch cast shadows that danced like specters. Deeper in, they found carvings, warriors battling sea beasts, a crimson veil splitting the sky, and a figure crowned with horns, hands raised over a shattered altar. A voice slithered through the air. "You trespass." Kael spun, blade out, as a woman emerged from the dark. Tall, her skin shimmered with scales, her hair a cascade of red. "I am Cirith," she said, amber eyes unblinking. "Keeper of the Veil. Your kind broke the pact." Lysa smirked. "Pact? We're just trying to eat." Cirith's gaze hardened. "The bloodstone feeds the sea. Without tribute, it takes what it will." Kael lowered his sword, wary. "What tribute?" Cirith pointed to a pool at the cave's heart, its surface red and still. "Life. Your ancestors knew." Torin growled. "You're killing us for some old deal?" She tilted her head. "I guard balance. Leave or join the tide." Chapter 4. The Village Divided. Back in Hollowmere, Kael shared Cirith's words. The villagers split. Half, led by Torin, demanded war on the sea beasts. The rest, with Marta, urged caution. "We can't fight the Veil," she said. "Find another way." Kael sided with Marta, but tension simmered. That night, Torin vanished with a dozen men, their boats slicing into the mist. Lysa scouted the docks, finding bloodstone dust on the pier. "They're hunting her," she said. Kael cursed. Torin's rage would doom them all. He gathered Lysa and a new ally, Erin, a healer with a limp and a knack for runes. Her hands shook as she traced the spear's crystals. "This binds power. We could use it. Redirect the tribute." Chapter 5. The Storm's Wrath. A storm hit at dawn, waves crashing over Hollowmere's roofs. Torin's boats returned, one battered out, with a single survivor, Joran, babbling of scaled claws and sinking screams. "She's coming," he gasped, then coughed blood, red crystals blooming in his throat. Cirith emerged from the tide, her form towering, horns glinting. "You struck first," she roared, and the sea surged, swallowing shacks. Kael faced her, spear raised. "We'll pay your price, just not with lives." She laughed, waves lashing. Lysa darted in, slashing Cirith's leg. Bloodstone shards fell, and the sea stilled briefly. Erin chanted, pressing the spear to the ground. A rune flared, and the tide receded. Cirith snarled. Clever, but temporary. She sank into the water, leaving a bloodstone crown behind. Chapter 6. The Subtle Betrayal. The crown pulsed, whispering to Kael, power, safety. Lysa urged him to destroy it, but Aaron hesitated. It's tied to her. We could control the veil. That night, Aaron slipped away, crown in hand, her limp gone. Kael woke to find her at the cave, runes glowing as she offered the crown to the pool. For Hollowmere, she said, tears streaking her face. The pool erupted, Cirith rising anew, her form radiant, the storm reborn. You fed me treachery, she hissed, and turned on Aaron, scales piercing her chest. Kael tackled Cirith, spear piercing her side. She shrieked, dissolving into mist, the crown shattering. The sea calmed, but Aaron lay still, blood pooling. Chapter 7. The Crimson Pact. Hollowmere mourned. Aaron Torin, the lost fishers. Kael buried the spear's shards at the cave's altar, carving a new rune. Balance. The bloodstone veins dimmed, the tide softening. Marta led a ritual, offering fish and herbs to the sea, a tribute Cirith's echo accepted. Lysa stayed, her grin softer now. We're cursed to care, huh? Kael nodded, blade sheathed. The mist lingered, but the crimson faded from the waves. Hollowmere rebuilt, wary but alive. Kael stood vigil on the cliffs, the hold stone stained red, a reminder of the veil's price. Chapter 8. The Keeper's Shadow. Years passed. The sea stayed calm. Fish returned, and Hollowmere grew. 500 souls now, their children taught the pact. Kael Graying trained Lysa's son, Vex in blade and rune. One dusk a red glint flickered in the tide. Kael gripped his sword, Lysa at his side. She's not gone, he murmured. The mist stirred, and a horned shadow watched, patient,